I was folding my daughter's baby clothes when I heard her voice behind me. Cold, sharp, final. You don't care about me. You never did. Emma stood in the doorway of my childhood bedroom, her arms crossed. Her eyes filled with something worse than anger. Disappointment. She was 24, successful, beautiful, everything I'd dreamed she'd become. And she looked at me like I was a stranger. Emma, that's not— Save it, Mom. She cut me off. I found the letters. My heart stopped. The air left the room. Letters. Plural. How many had she found? I was looking for old photos in the attic, she continued, her voice shaking now. For my wedding slideshow. And I found a whole box. Hidden. Dozens of them. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Yellowed. Worn. From Dad. The room spun. 23 years. 23 years I'd kept that box hidden. You told me he abandoned us, Emma whispered. You told me he didn't want me. But he wrote to me every month for 18 years. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What could I possibly say? The truth was complicated. The truth was ugly. The truth was something a daughter should never have to carry. The wedding is in 3 days, Emma said, her voice breaking. And I don't even know if I want you there. She turned and walked away, leaving me alone with the ghosts I thought I'd buried. But she didn't know the whole story yet. She didn't know what those letters cost me. She didn't know why I hid them. And God help me, she was about to find out. The rehearsal dinner was at a vineyard outside Portland. White lights strung between oak trees. Emma's fiancé, Marcus, had spared no expense. Everyone who mattered was there. His family. Her friends. My sister Janet, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years. And Emma wouldn't look at me. I sat at the far end of the table, picking at salmon I couldn't taste. Conversations swirled around me, laughter, toasts, joy I wasn't part of. Marcus's mother kept glancing at me with thinly veiled curiosity. She knew something was wrong. Speech, speech! Someone called out. Marcus stood, grinning, his arm around Emma. I just want to thank everyone for being here, especially my beautiful bride-to-be. He kissed her temple. And her mom, Claire, who raised this incredible woman all by herself. The table erupted in polite applause. Emma's smile was plastic. I wanted to disappear. Then my sister stood up, Janet, always perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, perfectly cruel. I'd like to say something too, she announced, wineglass raised. My stomach dropped. Claire has always been independent, Janet began, her eyes finding mine across the table. She made choices. Hard choices, like keeping Emma's father away for over 2 decades. Silence crashed over the vineyard. Forks stopped midair. Marcus's parents exchanged glances. Janet, don't, I whispered, but my voice was too small. Emma deserves to know the truth, Janet continued, louder now. About why her mother hid those letters. About why she lied. Emma's face had gone white. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder, confused. The truth is, Janet smiled, vicious and satisfied, your mother isn't the victim she pretends to be. Everyone was staring at me now, judging, waiting. And I realized with horror that Janet knew more than I thought. She'd always known. The nightmare was just beginning. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. The crash echoed through the stunned silence. Janet, stop. But my sister was enjoying this too much. She'd waited years for this moment. Years to destroy me in front of everyone who mattered. Why should I stop? Janet tilted her head, fake innocence dripping from every word. Emma deserves to know what kind of woman her mother really is. Marcus stood up. I think maybe we should— Sit down, Marcus, Janet snapped. This doesn't concern you. Not yet, anyway. She turned back to the crowd, a performer with a captive audience. Claire didn't keep David away because he was dangerous. She kept him away because she was ashamed. My hands were shaking. 26. I was 26 years old, barely older than Emma was now, and I was being torn apart in front of 50 people. He wasn't good enough for her, Janet continued. Working class? No college degree. A mechanic. And when Claire got pregnant, our parents gave her an ultimatum. Him or them. Money or love. Emma's eyes found mine across the table, searching, desperate for me to deny it. And you know what she chose? Janet laughed, bitter and sharp. The trust fund. The house. The comfortable life. She told David to leave and never contact them again. That's not how it happened. I finally found my voice. Isn't it? Janet raised an eyebrow. Then why did you hide his letters? Why did you let Emma believe her father didn't want her? Because I was protecting her. From what? From a man who loved her? Who wrote to her every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone? Janet pulled out her phone. Oh, did I mention? I contacted him. David's alive. He lives in Seattle, and he's been trying to find Emma for years. The world tilted sideways. Emma stood up, tears streaming down her face. You contacted my father? Someone had to, Janet said smugly. And that's when the side gate opened. A man stepped into the vineyard, tall, graying hair, worn leather jacket. Emma gasped. Hello, Claire, David said quietly. It's been a long time. The vineyard erupted into chaos. Whispers became shouts. Marcus's mother clutched her pearls, literally. Emma stood frozen, staring at the man she'd never met but had his eyes. You invited him? I turned on Janet, my voice raw. To her rehearsal dinner? I gave Emma what you never could, Janet shot back. The truth. David walked closer, his boots crunching on gravel. Every step felt like a countdown to explosion. He looked older, tired, but his eyes were the same. Kind. Too kind for what I'd done to him. Emma, he said softly, stopping a few feet away. I know this is a shock. I didn't want to crash your wedding. But your aunt said, don't talk to her. The words ripped out of me before I could stop them. Everyone stared. Emma's face crumbled. Mom, she whispered. Why are you acting like this? Because he doesn't know. I was shaking, tears blurring my vision. Janet doesn't know either. Nobody knows the whole story. David's expression shifted. Something flickered there. Uncertainty. Marcus stepped forward, protective. I'm sorry, I don't even know your last name. Morrison, David said quietly. David Morrison. Mr. Morrison, I think you should leave, Marcus continued. This isn't the time or place. No. Emma's voice cut through everything. Strong. Certain. He stays. She walked toward David slowly, like approaching something fragile. Something that might disappear. You wrote to me? She asked, her voice breaking. David nodded. Every month. For 18 years. Until I believed you didn't want to hear from me. I never got them, Emma whispered. Not one. His face collapsed. Claire, how could you? The judgment in his voice, in everyone's eyes, was suffocating. They all thought they knew. They all thought I was the villain. Tell them, Janet demanded. Tell them why you really kept him away. Tell them about the money. I looked at Emma, at the daughter I'd raised alone, at the strong, brilliant woman she'd become despite everything. Fine, I said. You want the truth? All of it. I turned to David, my heart hammering. Tell them what you did first. Tell them why I ran. David's face went pale, and I knew he understood exactly what I meant. David took a step back. The color drained from his face. Claire, don't what? I laughed, but it came out broken. Don't tell them the part you conveniently forgot? The part Janet doesn't know because she wasn't there? The vineyard had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Emma looked between us, confusion and fear mixing in her eyes. Mom, what are you talking about? I turned to my daughter, my hands trembling. You want to know why I kept him away? Why I hid the letters? It wasn't about money. It was never about money. Then what? Emma demanded. It was about survival. I faced David directly now. Tell them what happened the night I told you I was pregnant. David's jaw clenched. That's not fair. Fair? My voice rose. You want to talk about fair? You stood in my parents' driveway and told me you'd make sure I never kept the baby. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Janet's smug expression faltered. You said you weren't ready to be a father, I continued, my voice shaking with 24 years of buried pain. You said I'd trapped you. That if I had the baby, you'd disappear anyway, so what was the point? I was 22, David shouted back. I was scared. I didn't mean, you told me to get rid of it. The words tore out of me. You called our daughter it and told me to get rid of her. Emma made a sound like she'd been struck. Marcus wrapped his arm around her. David's eyes were wild now. I came back. 3 days later, I came back and said I was wrong. I wanted to make it work. And my parents were already dead. The silence that followed was absolute. Janet sat down slowly, her face ashen. What? I'd never told anyone this part. Not even my sister. Car accident, I whispered. Head-on collision. The night after you told me to abort my baby, I went to them crying. My father got in the car to, I don't know, clear his head. My mother went with him. My voice cracked. They died on Highway 26 because of us. Because of our mess. Emma's hand covered her mouth. So when you came back 3 days later saying you'd changed your mind. I looked at David with all the grief I'd carried. I'd just buried my parents, alone, pregnant, 26 years old. The weight of my words hung in the air like smoke. No one moved. No one breathed. David's face was a mask of anguish. Claire, I didn't know. You never told me they died. When I came back to your house, you were gone. The place was empty. You thought I chose money over you? I laughed bitterly. There was no money, David. My parents died with debt. The house was mortgaged to the ceiling. Everything I told Emma about building our life from nothing? It was true. Janet stood up, her face pale. But the trust fund. Mom and Dad had nothing. I cut her off. They'd remortgaged everything to pay for your law school, Janet. There was no inheritance. No comfortable life waiting for me. Just a pregnant 26-year-old with dead parents and a man who'd told her to abort her baby. Emma was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Marcus held her tightly. So I left, I continued. I moved to Portland. I worked 3 jobs while pregnant. I had Emma alone in a county hospital. And when your letters started coming, I turned to David. I read every single one. His eyes widened. Every birthday card, every Christmas letter, every I'm sorry, and I want to be in her life and please give me a chance. My voice broke. And you know what I saw in them? What? David whispered. Guilt, not love, guilt. I wiped my eyes. You were writing to ease your conscience, to feel like a good person. But you never once asked about me, about how I was surviving, about whether I needed help with diapers or formula or rent. That's not fair. Every letter was about you, I said firmly. Your regrets, your pain, your growth. You talked about the daughter you'd never met like she was a concept. A chance for redemption, not a real child who needed a father who'd show up. An older woman stepped forward from the crowd. Gray hair, kind eyes, expensive coat. Marcus's grandmother. Excuse me, she said softly, but I think there's something everyone's missing here. All eyes turned to her. This young woman, she gestured to me, raised a daughter alone after unimaginable loss. And that daughter became someone worth celebrating. She looked at Emma. Maybe the question isn't why she kept the letters. Maybe it's why any of you think you have the right to judge what a grieving, terrified young mother did to survive. The silence shifted, softened. Janet sat down, her performance over. But David wasn't finished. You still should have let me try, he said quietly. You should have let Emma decide. And that's when Emma finally spoke. She did let me decide. Everyone turned to her. I decided Mom was enough. Emma stepped away from Marcus, her eyes locked on mine. Tears still streaked her face, but something had shifted in her expression. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of it. I spent my whole life angry at a ghost, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling. Angry at a father who I thought abandoned me. And now I find out he wrote letters, and I was angry at you for hiding them. She turned to David. But you did abandon me. Before I was even born, you told my mother to get rid of me. David flinched. Emma, I was young and stupid. So was she. Emma interrupted. She was young and stupid and alone, and she chose me anyway. My heart cracked open. You wrote letters? Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. You sent cards. You felt guilty from a distance. But my mom? She was there. Every fever, every nightmare, every school play and scraped knee and broken heart. I wanted to be there. David's voice rose. She kept me away. No, Emma's word rang out across the vineyard. You kept yourself away the moment you told her to abort me. Everything after that? That was just you trying to rewrite history. Janet tried to speak. Emma, you don't understand the full— Shut up, Aunt Janet! Emma's voice was ice. You did this for spite, not for me. You've hated Mom for years because Grandma and Grandpa gave her attention you thought you deserved. And now you know why? They died helping her, supporting her, while you were busy building your perfect life. Janet's face crumpled. Emma turned back to me. Mom, why didn't you tell me? About Grandma and Grandpa? About what really happened? Because I struggled to find the words. Because you were my fresh start. My reason to keep going. And I didn't want you to carry the weight of their death. I didn't want you to feel like you cost me everything. But I did, Emma whispered. No. I walked to her, closing the distance between us. You saved me. You were the only thing that mattered after they died. The only reason I got out of bed. The only reason I survived. I took her hands in mine. I kept the letters because I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid that if you knew he wanted contact, you'd love him more than me. That you'd realize I wasn't enough. That I'd lose you too. Mom, Emma's voice broke. I was wrong, I said. I should have trusted you. Trusted us. I'm so sorry. Emma pulled me into a hug and I felt her body shake with sobs. I held her like I did when she was small, when the world was simpler and I was all she needed. But over her shoulder I saw David's face, and I saw something there that made my blood run cold. Rage. That's a beautiful story, Claire, he said slowly. Really touching, but you're still lying. Emma pulled back. What? David reached into his jacket. Because I have proof that changes everything. David pulled out a folded document. Old, creased, official-looking. My stomach dropped. What is that? Emma asked, her voice uncertain. The real reason your mother kept me away. David's eyes met mine, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Calculation. It's not about what I said when I was 22. It's about what she did 6 months before you were born. David, don't do this, I warned. A restraining order, he said, holding it up. Filed by Claire Mitchell against me. Claiming I threatened her. Claiming I was dangerous. Murmurs erupted through the crowd. Emma's eyes went wide. That's because you were, I shouted. You showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m. You were drunk, banging on the door, screaming. I was begging you to talk to me. David shot back. After your parents died, you disappeared. Changed your number. I was desperate to find you, to help you, and you painted me as some kind of monster. You broke my window. By accident. His voice echoed across the vineyard. I was knocking and I lost my balance. But you used that to make sure I could never come near you or Emma. You used the law to erase me. Emma looked at me, confusion and hurt swirling in her eyes. Mom, is this true? My hands were shaking. It's more complicated than— Yes or no? Emma demanded. Did you file a restraining order against him? I closed my eyes. Yes. The word fell like a bomb. But he's leaving out the part where he told me he'd take you away, I said quickly, desperately. He said if I didn't let him back in, he'd fight for custody. He'd prove I was unstable. He'd take my baby. David's face hardened. I never said that. Yes, you did. You were drunk and angry and you said— My voice cracked. You said I'd regret keeping you away. That you'd make sure I'd regret it. That's not a threat to take Emma, David said coldly. That's a promise that the truth would come out eventually. Marcus's grandmother spoke up again. Young man, threatening a pregnant woman, drunk in the middle of the night? That sounds like grounds for a restraining order to me. I never threatened her. David's composure finally broke. I loved her. I loved them both. And she used my lowest moment, my worst mistake, to justify cutting me out forever. Your lowest moment? I was shaking with rage now. Your lowest moment was telling me to abort my daughter. Everything after that was just consequences. And you made sure those consequences lasted a lifetime, David yelled. The tension was unbearable. Everyone was taking sides, whispers, glances, judgment flying in every direction. Then a new voice cut through the chaos. Actually, none of you are telling the whole truth. An elderly man stepped out from behind the catering tent. Gray beard, weathered face, familiar in a way that made my breath catch. Emma gasped. Grandpa Joe? David's father, a man I hadn't seen in over 20 years. And I have the proof to prove it, he said quietly, holding up an envelope. Dad, what are you doing here? David looked panicked now. Cleaning up the mess you both made, Joe said. Before this girl's wedding is destroyed by lies. He walked toward Emma. Your mother's not a villain. Your father's not a villain, but neither of them are saints either. He handed Emma the envelope. The truth is in there, and it's going to hurt. But you deserve it. Emma's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside were papers, old photographs, a letter in handwriting I didn't recognize. What is this? She whispered. Joe looked at me with something like pity. The night of the accident. The night Claire's parents died. They weren't just driving to clear their heads. My blood turned to ice. Grandpa Joe, please, David started. No. The old man's voice was firm. I've kept this secret for 24 years because Claire begged me to. But she's used it as a weapon, and you've used your guilt as a shield, and this girl deserves the whole damn truth. He turned to Emma. Your mother's father called me that night. He was upset, angry, and he asked me to meet him at a bar off Highway 26. He wanted to talk about David, about the pregnancy, about what our families were going to do. I felt the room spinning. I told him I'd be there in an hour, Joe continued. But I got a call on the way. Work emergency. I turned around. I never made it to that bar. Emma looked up from the papers. I don't understand. Your grandfather drove to that bar to meet me, Joe said quietly. Your grandmother went with him to keep him calm. They waited for 2 hours. I never showed. And on the drive home, angry and tired, your grandfather ran a red light. The words hit me like a physical blow. The accident wasn't random, Joe said. It was caused by me standing him up, by all of us being too busy fighting to see clearly. He pulled out a photograph, a police report. The other driver survived. He gave a statement, said your grandfather's car ran the light at full speed, like he wasn't paying attention, like his mind was somewhere else. Emma's face was white. Why are you telling me this? Because your mother has carried the guilt of that night for 24 years, Joe said, looking at me with sad eyes. She thinks she killed her parents by getting pregnant, by causing family chaos, and she's punished herself, and David, and even you, because of it. That's not true, I whispered, but my voice had no strength. Isn't it? Joe asked gently. You kept David away not just because of what he said, but because you blamed both of you for their deaths. You kept the letters because you thought you didn't deserve happiness. You built a life of sacrifice because you thought you had to earn the right to be Emma's mother. Tears streamed down my face. And David, Joe turned to his son, you've spent 24 years playing the victim, writing letters, feeling sorry for yourself. But you never once fought for real custody, never took Claire to court, never actually showed up. David's face crumbled. You were content to be the tragic absent father, Joe continued, because it was easier than being a real parent. The silence was deafening. Emma looked at the papers in her hands, then at me, then at David. So everyone's been lying, she said flatly. Everyone's been hiding behind their pain and using me as an excuse. No one answered. She turned to Marcus. Can we go? Emma, I reached for her. Don't, her voice cracked. Not right now. I can't. I just can't. Marcus guided her toward the parking lot. She was leaving, walking away from all of us, and I couldn't blame her. But as they reached the gate, a young woman appeared, blocking their path. Short dark hair, leather jacket. Emma's age. Emma Morrison? The woman asked. Who are you? The woman smiled nervously. My name is Sophie Morrison. I'm David's daughter. Your half-sister. And we need to talk before you walk away from this family forever. The world stopped. Emma stared at the woman, at Sophie, at the sister she never knew existed. What? Emma's voice was barely a whisper. David's face went chalk white. Sophie, you shouldn't be here. Half-sister? Emma repeated, her voice rising. Dad, you have another daughter? Had, Sophie corrected quietly. Past tense. He gave me up for adoption when I was 3. The vineyard erupted. Janet gasped. Marcus's family looked scandalized, and I felt something crack open inside me, something that had been locked away for decades. You had a daughter before Emma? I asked, my voice distant and strange. David couldn't meet my eyes. It was before we met. I was 19. Her mother and I. It didn't work out. You gave up a child, Emma said slowly, and then told my mother to abort me? The pieces were falling into place, the real picture emerging. Sophie stepped closer. I found him 2 years ago. Did one of those DNA tests. We met a few times, but... She looked at David with something like pity. He wasn't ready to be in my life. Said he had too much regret about another daughter he'd lost. You. She turned to Emma. I've been following your life online. Your Instagram. Your career. And when I saw the wedding announcement, I knew I had to come. Because he was planning to use this moment to get back into your life, and you deserve to know who he really is. That's not true, David protested weakly. Isn't it? Sophie pulled out her phone. You told me 3 weeks ago that Emma's wedding was your second chance, that you'd use the emotional moment to reconnect. You even asked me not to contact her until after so I wouldn't complicate things. Emma looked at David with absolute betrayal. You orchestrated this? The letters Janet found showing up tonight. This was all a manipulation? No, I mean, I wanted to be in your life, but you wanted it on your terms, Sophie finished. Like always. Like he did with me. Like he did with my birth mother. Joe stepped forward, his face grave. Son, is this true? David's silence was answer enough. Emma turned to me. Her eyes were red, exhausted but clear. Mom, you made mistakes. You kept secrets. But you were there. Every single day of my life, you were there. Her voice broke. And I'm so sorry I doubted that. She crossed the space between us and wrapped her arms around me. I'm sorry about Grandma and Grandpa, she whispered against my shoulder. I'm sorry you carried that alone. And I'm sorry I let them make you feel like the villain. I held my daughter and cried. 24 years of guilt and fear and love pouring out. The wedding is still on, Emma said, pulling back and wiping her eyes. But it's going to be different. She looked at David. You're not invited. I don't need a father who only shows up when it's convenient. Then she turned to Sophie. But you are. If you want to be, I'd like to get to know my sister. Sophie smiled, tears in her eyes. I'd like that. Emma took Marcus's hand. Let's go home. We have a wedding to finish planning. As they walked away, Sophie following beside them, talking quietly, I felt Joe's hand on my shoulder. You did good, Claire, he said softly. She's strong because of you. I watched my daughter walk into her future, her real family beside her, and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. David stood alone in the vineyard, surrounded by strangers, holding letters that didn't matter anymore, and I finally let him go.